Every time the princess got married, she met in death under bizarre circumstances. At her first wedding, she simply stuck her head out of the bridal sedan chair only to hit it and die instantly. When she was reborn, she came prepared. She'd secretly installed padding inside the sedan. She thought she'd finally make it through safely, but tripped and fell to her death the moment she stepped out. For her third attempt, she did make it to the prince consort's mansion unharmed, only to be burned alive in a sudden fire. The fourth time, a signboard suddenly fell from above and crushed her. The princess was at a loss. Why couldn't she just have a normal wedding? Her fifth life, she proceeded with extreme caution, finally reaching the bridal chamber door. But then a kitten knocked a tile loose from the roof. The tile didn't hit her, but her maid shoved her to the ground in a panic, and her head struck a stone. She died again. After so many painful deaths, the princess was convinced her red wedding dress was cursed, so she chose a plain white gown for her next marriage. But no one could have predicted what happened on her wedding night. Her beloved prince consort stabbed her, all because she'd refused to let him take his scheming cousin as a concubine that same day. As she breathed her last, the princess finally realized heaven had been trying to stop her from marrying that scumbag all along. But in the next second, she was reborn right on the day the emperor told her to choose her prince consort. At that moment, the emperor was holding the scumbag's portrait, hinting for her to pick him. This time, the princess was utterly stunned. Determined not to repeat her past mistakes, she gritted her teeth and randomly pointed to another portrait nearby. Fate, however, played another cruel joke on her. The man in that portrait was the great general, her bitterest rival in her previous life. But to cut all ties with the scumbag once and for all, she forced herself to tell the emperor, "I choose the great general." Right after the selection, as the princess walked out of the palace hall, the noble young lords outside all assumed she'd picked the marquis's son, the scumbag. When she saw the marquis's son looking so confident, she almost called him out publicly to embarrass him, but then a better revenge plan crossed her mind. Instead, she told everyone, "In 7 days, on my wedding day, the emperor will send someone to read an imperial edict. By then, you'll all know who the prince consort is." Just then, the scheming cousin rushed over. She faked a curtsy, then immediately lunged at the princess, on purpose tripping and falling to the ground. The marquis's son hurried over to help her up, and the schemer took the chance to act coquettish in his arms. Watching the schemer's fake act, the princess remembered, this was exactly the kind of trick the woman had used to frame her in her past life. Back then, she'd always held back to avoid making the marquis's son uncomfortable. But now that she'd been reborn, she refused to indulge the schemer any longer. So when the marquis's son demanded she apologize to the schemer, the princess slapped the woman hard across the face. Then she pushed the schemer down the palace steps. The marquis's son tried to argue with her, only for the princess to snap, "He's my fiancé. He should put me first in everything, not act so petty over another woman." He was left speechless, and stormed off, carrying the schemer in his arms. The onlookers were confused. Until then, the princess had always obeyed the marquis's son without question. Meanwhile, the princess caught sight of the great general watching from the side. She told him, "You must come to my wedding in 7 days. In truth, the great general had long secretly loved the princess, but he'd known her heart only belonged to the marquis's son, so he'd always pretended not to care. The princess noticed his expression and muttered softly, "Who said I wouldn't choose you? You are my prince consort." Suddenly, she realized she hadn't prepared an engagement gift for the general. She hurried to a jewelry shop to pick something out. She just settled on a pair of jade pendants, one carved with a dragon, the other a phoenix, when the schemer burst in with